that brings us to session 6 of the conference, where we will hear from our distinguished guests about how they are focusing on their approach and facing their challenges as they build their joint forces. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you our distinguished guests and next presenters. Firstly, we have Rear Admiral Alex Burton. He's the Commander, United Kingdom Maritime Forces. And we have Air Vice Marshal Bruno Paccagnini, Deputy Chief of Staff from the Long-Term Planning and Military Strategy area of the Joint Staff French Armed Forces. So gentlemen, welcome to Australia, and I look forward to hearing from you about how you are approaching this task. When the gentlemen are finished, we'll take questions, so I look forward to that part as well. Thank you.
Well, if industry is still here, I suggest you dig deep into your pockets, because the UK performed quite well at the Invictus Games last year, so you've got some challenges ahead of you. Firstly, to Siemens and to Peter, thank you very much for a fantastic dinner last night, and also for the privilege of coming to speak today. I'm very keen to avoid the stereotypical POM coming across all the way over here and preaching about how we did it, but I'm also acutely aware that that we share staggeringly common challenges as we deliver and transform both our means of delivering capability in the wicked world that Sir John described, and also the means of operating those capabilities when they turn up. So I hope that I'm able to offer you some of the errors and the challenges that we've confronted and some of the opportunities that we've realized over the next 10 to 15 minutes. My career recently has been involved in two areas which are closely associated with the integration that we've been speaking about over the last 12 to 24 hours. Over the past year, I've been the Senior Seagoing Admiral, the Maritime Component Commander for the UK Forces, and latterly for the last 12 months, the two-star NATO High Readiness Commander. And for 3 years prior to that, I was responsible for the Navy's future capability. And in both those jobs, they were naval command jobs, but in reality, the decisions and the authority over much that I was doing was not held by me nor by my service, but by the central command, whether it was the joint commander on operations or whether it was head office with some of the strategic decisions. In future capability, the direction was provided and is provided by our headquarters, very similar to yours. And indeed, many of the capabilities in some of the ships that I was developing were delivered by the other frontline commands that served. So integration was integral to what I've been doing. The requirement to be integrated was absolutely within every thought and deed that I conducted over the last 5 years. And as I said, I've been struck by the very similar approaches that you're taking to very similar problems, whether that is your development back into task group operations as we are developing back into task group operations with the arrival sailing later this month of HMS Queen Elizabeth and shortly after that Prince of Wales, or whether it is your approach to capability and the relationship between your head office and your services through the first principles, which has a very common thread to the review that we did a couple of years ago. So my key theme will be that to respond to some of the wicked problems that Sir John described yesterday, we're both changing a good number of our processes to make us more efficient, make us more relevant. But as we change those processes, both within our operational centres, our headquarters, and our offices, I think, and certainly the experience I've had, some of the biggest challenges that we'll have is changing the cultures to deliver those processes within the wicked world that Sir John described. So I'll go through a couple of areas, and I'll start with the interoperability and the integration that we have with our allies. And like you, our closest ally is the United States. But in reality, the structures and the principles, the doctrine and the concepts that bound the way we operate sit firmly within NATO, the cornerstone, as the current Prime Minister described, of our collective defence. And although it's key within its definition being the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is the skeleton around which we conduct our entire operations. Whether that is the formal NATO construct that we used for Afghanistan, and we operate in the North Atlantic when we are competing against a mischievous Russia, or whether it's operating in the Gulf with a coalition that doesn't sit under a NATO command, or whether we operate with yourselves as an enhanced opportunity partner. The golden thread of skeleton of command and control, of structures and doctrine of NATO helps us with that culture. So very rarely are we under a NATO command and control. But that learning, that culture that has been imbued through so many years ensures that we have a really strong interoperability and integration with like-minded nations. It provides that culture. In 2015, in the last defence review, we made two changes to some of our integrated operations with our allies, which were complementary to NATO and had a European focus. One of them, and I'm delighted to be sharing the podium with Bruno, one of them was with our French allies, and we've set up an organisation called the Combined Joint Expeditionary Force, which is an expeditionary force of all elements of warfare, and particularly with the French. We spent the last 24 months delivering that to an initial operating capability with live exercises both in the UK and in France. And the first demonstration of it brought to life has been the Rainbow Coalition of UK and French mariners delivering a CTF 150 for the next few months. The other concept that came out of the 2015 Strategic Defence Review was the Joint Expeditionary Force itself. That is a broader coalition. It's bound around UK capability and UK forces, but it has our partners from the Netherlands, from Norway, from the Baltic states, and is designed as an agile response which is complementary to NATO to be able to respond to either a contingent capability outside NATO's area of operation, or respond early whilst NATO as a political organisation is coming to a decision. All of those are absolutely bound by those NATO cultures and structures. If I look more broadly into the Gulf, an area where our two nations have been operating almost continually in the Maritime, I would say, for the last 30, 40 years, certainly through my career. Right now, under CTF 150, a combined French and UK-led task force, HMS Arunta, and the Minister mentioned her just yesterday, and HMS Monmouth have been operating together in direct support on counter-terrorism, counter-drug operations. Almost routine. Any naval officer that is here will know how instinctive our closeness of operations is through that, and I've absolutely no doubt it is exactly the same with the airstrikes that are going on with Daesh and the operations that are on the land. And separately, the UK has a mine warfare battle staff in the Gulf that commands 4 UK mine hunters. We're shortly going to turn that into a Rainbow Australian, Royal Australian Navy, Royal Navy battle staff to further integrate with those allies. And critical to all of this success, that NATO structure, but critical to all of it, as far as I'm concerned, when we're in this arena with the Australians, is the Five Eyes community, which is a collective group of nations, as you know, who not only share common cultures, not only have an understanding of the structures and doctrines that NATO brings, but have a long history of high-end warfighting capability and a conscious decision that we're prepared to spill blood and treasure with that capability. High-end operations that many of you will have experienced with those other Five Eyes nations, and increasingly common capabilities with complex platforms. So the ability there are very few nations, and I would include the French with that can deliver complex anti-submarine warfare capabilities. Very few nations that can deliver complex, successful amphibious operations, and it's great to see the Australian Navy and the Army getting back into that capability. Very few nations that can deliver large-scale air packages and air policing and are then prepared to use it. That mass and capability. So intelligence, trust, a common culture, and common capabilities, whether it's the P-8, whether it's the F-35, bind together nations with that integration and interoperability. I want to briefly mention the journey that the UK has been on in integrating the services for operations. The journey started in the early part of this decade with the breakdown of single service operational command centres and the focusing in on what we know as permanent joint headquarters and is very, very similar to the joint operational command that you have in Australia. That has delivered phenomenally successfully. It deploys, it sustains, it recovers all three services on campaign footing, whether it's in Iraq, Afghanistan, continuing in the Gulf, and our United Nations operations. And partners in government, whether it's the aid agencies or the security services, plug into that structure. But, and I stress the point of the campaign footing, it is an organization that delivers campaigns and delivers campaigns hugely successfully. What it was less good at was delivering a contingent capability, being able to respond to those all too frequent fires that start up in various areas of the world. And we plugged that gap in 2015 when we established what is known as the Standing Joint Force Headquarters, which is a two-star deployable headquarters which sits as primus inter pares above the component commanders, delivering joint and integrated operations, as the Vice Chief said. So for the first time, it has the partners in government integrated within its headquarters on a permanent basis, ready to respond, whether that's the aid agencies, the security services, our own signals intelligence unit. A truly joint, and as the Vice Chief said, integrated headquarters. As a maritime component commander, I think it's highly unlikely I will ever command an operation straight back to the UK. The likelihood now is that I will act as a component commander for a joint operation under that Standing Joint Force Headquarters. It is difficult to describe the change in culture that has had to come across as I, as a naval officer who expected to command a task group as Sandy Woodward did back in 1982, or a divisional commander in the Army expected to command his division up through an Army chain, is now working directly to a joint deployable headquarters into either deployed or back to the UK. So those structures have changed, but the cultural change that ensures success of those structures is absolutely critical. And changing that culture to ensure that the critical capabilities that we do not have enough of, to ensure that each component commander has them, whether that's the strategic and operational I-STAR, whether it's the support that we get from the special forces, whether it's the strike capability either from air or from ashore. All of that then gets handed to the joint headquarters and then gets bid for by the component commanders, which is an uncomfortable position as a naval officer who's used to owning the maritime patrol aircraft myself. I'm now having to bid for that. So that's the journey that we've been through. And as I reflect upon that journey, I look at, and I think at one stage, the US Marine Corps were going to be joining us on the table. I look at the fact that the UK Armed Forces are smaller than the US Marine Corps, and we are only just getting to the level of integration that the US Marine Corps find instinctive. You'll be seeing a lot of that, and you have seen a lot of that with the exercises that you'll be conducting with them over the year. Finally, I thought I'd reflect back a little bit on my experience of a couple of years ago when I was delivering future capability for the Navy and the integration in the design of our capabilities. We've got a capability development cycle very, very similar to yours. The design starts with head office. They wargame with scientific evidence, support of likelihood of success against the policy-defined scale of operations, the length of operations, the regional areas, with a defense intelligence-led threat calculus, and a concurrency that again is described by policy. As an operational commander, I'm involved in that wargaming, but it's the head office that decide where the shortfalls and the affluences, if there are any, within defence are. They then hand the single services in a very similar manner to you. They then hand the single services both the budget and the responsibility to deliver that capability. And I will admit to a challenge here as an individual that was charged up until a year and a half ago to deliver our new ships. Being given the budget and the responsibility to deliver ships with a national shipbuilding strategy, with all the strategic risks that has, which you'll be experiencing yourself over the next few years, is a significantly larger level of risk than a single service would normally be expected to take on. And we're still not quite sure whether that level of risk should sit with the single services or whether it should be aggregated up into head office. And I think there's an element of some risk held at head office and some risk held down at the single services. We also have a joint forces command, which I think is has slightly greater responsibility than that which is in the Australian Defence Force. The reality is that they take that glue that people have described on several occasions over the last 12 hours, that is common and required by each of the individual services. They sponsor it and they deliver it on our behalf. But if I was also slightly provocative, I would say they take those capabilities that are slightly less iconic and totemic to the single services, and if they weren't owned by a joint commander, might well get traded out for those capabilities that are seen as a legacy of a single service. There's been some discussion about the level of agility that the services have, and we suffer from exactly the same challenges as you in this sense. One of the changes that we within our service have done over the last 12 to 18 months is taken a portion of our budget and ring-fenced it to deliver transformational technology. Now, there's never enough to deliver that, and generally what we find is that we're delivering the experimental and the trials kit that we can then bid for further money on. But we have a Dragon's Den and we have the Skunk Works that try and encourage industry to be disruptive, get it wet as we describe it, and then attempt to see whether we can trade out more conventional capabilities on the back of that. One of the most tangible examples of that was last autumn when we led the largest unmanned capability demonstration and trials program off the coast of Scotland that the globe has ever seen, where industry, all three services, many international countries, including Australia, came to trial their kit, see which worked best, change it on an almost hour-by-hour basis to find improvements, and then take it back. The challenge we'll have is then bidding in for enough money to get that transformational and disruptive technology and bring it to life on the front line. So agility is hard. We're trying it. I'm not sure we've had full success yet. So to conclude, the delivery of process change and retaining that fighting edge in a world that Sir John described is really, really hard. Fundamentally, in my mind, the biggest challenge that we have as service people is changing the culture when you're changing the processes. And here's the rub. For military organizations that have upwards of 600 years of legacy on their shoulders, that recruit, as you do and I do, from 18 to 21, and then require them to remain right the way through, and some of them right to the top of the service, in a very hierarchical organization where we are instinctively deferential. to have the young people drive through that change of culture and have the more senior and older people like myself prepared to change that culture is really difficult. And if I could reflect on some of the challenges I have and you may have in the future, you may be lucky to avoid it, is that a consensual approach and the integrated approach, which has been so tangible during the presentations that I've seen so far between the three services, is brilliant. And we have a large amount of it as well. The challenge comes when the resources to deliver become less. And those resources on the operational field may be the critical I-star or the special forces that you as a commander need to deliver your piece, but is being handed over to the other component commander. And in the capability world, it is likely to be less money than you expected when you set out on this journey. At that stage, that's the time when cultural change and behaviors will be absolutely critical. Because if you haven't got those cultural and behavioral changes set in place, then the seams that you've attempted to avoid with the process change open up in a far more raw manner at the very time that you don't wish it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. Please, can I hand you over to Bruno?
Thank you very much, Alex. So if I'm doing right, I have slides coming up. Okay. I'm very pleased to be here. It's been a long way to come to Australia. I'm a non-native speaker, so please apologize my English. I have actually a few slides which will make it easier for me to go through this presentation. It should last about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll be ready for question and answers after the presentation. The overall political organization in France is depicted on this slide, and the main idea that I want to pass through here is that the chief of the armed forces, the president of the republic, or the opposite, the French president, when he's elected, he becomes de facto the chief of the armed forces, and that puts the Chad in direct relation with the president of the French Republic, going through the Minister of the Armed Forces, the new name of the Minister of Defense. The thing is, the Minister of Defense of the Armed Forces actually has 3 subordinates, including the Chad, but as the Chad has 2 main, overarching responsibilities, i.e. he is the military counselor, he provides military advice to the President of the Republic, and secondly, he is the operations commander that provides him with a direct link to the President of the Republic, who, at the end of the day, is the chief of the armed forces. What that means is that if there's an operation to launch, the only one to decide to launch the operation is the President of the Republic. Okay, he will do that based upon the advice that he will get from the Chad, of course, but he is the sole person responsible to launch the operation. Okay, when it comes to the organization, I will go very, very quickly on this slide, but there is one message on this slide, or 2 actually messages. The first one is that the service chiefs, the chiefs of staff of the Army, Air Force, and Navy are subordinates to the CDS, to the Chief of Defense Staff, which has been a change in the past 15 years. That was decided in 2005. And the reason behind that is to give the CDS better responsibility over the coherence, including in building capabilities. So now we're getting to this topic of the presentation. The second message is that the red boxes that you see is the share between the budget responsibilities within the Ministry of Defense. Okay. The Minister of Defense is responsible of the budget for the overall ministry, but then inside the ministry you have different pockets, I would say, and each red box represents the different pockets, and the principal who is responsible over his pocket is for the armed forces, the CDS. But when it comes to procurement of equipment, then there is a shared responsibility between the DGA, who is the head of the procurement agency of the ministry, and the CDS. So when you build capabilities as far as needs and requirements, you build it through the requirements that are desired by the armed forces. But when it comes to contracting, then it falls into the hands of the DGA, the procurement agency head. And when it comes to financing, how much this will cost, then it's a co-responsibility between the CDS and the DGA, which is somehow important because it provides the CDS with an overview of what's going on with as far as money goes when we are developing capabilities. I hope this is clear, but I'll be ready to answer questions if you have any. Okay, so I was mentioning the two overarching responsibilities that the CDS has regarding the authority of the president. Okay, he's the advisor and he's the operations commander when the president decides to launch an operation. And under the authority of the Minister of Defense, the CDS has several responsibilities, including the ones of defining the format and the model of the armed forces, ensuring the coherence of the capabilities, and planning and programming when it comes to budgets. He's got some other responsibilities, but this is not today's discussion. How do we do then? There is a multi-annual process, which is writing the white paper. The current white paper was elaborated in 2013. It's still valid, okay, and it's still valid because we consider that the threats and strategic environments, the national ambitions haven't changed. However, there should be a review in the few months coming ahead of us, and you have to consider that writing either a review or a white book is a highly political move, okay, so the new President of the Republic, who was elected just a few weeks ago, has not officially decided, but we understand that he will launch a review, a strategic review that should last 2 to 3 months to elaborate, and it will not have the same scope as the white book. The white book remaining pretty much update for the following years. However, the president will probably launch a review this summertime. The white books have been lately updated more often than before. There was one written in the early 70s, and then there was one in the mid 90s, and then there was one in 2000 and in 2013. But I understand what Alex was saying. We're crushed into the paradox of a fast-moving world, and at the same time, we also need stability. And so, in the next few years, maybe we'll have some changes, strategic changes in the context, in the environment. However, the white book, is this a reason to write another white book or to write a review? So these are two different processes to try to make sure we cope with the moving environment. Okay, in the planning process, then we have an LPM, which is a Procurement or a Military Planning and Programming Act. Okay, this is voted by the Parliament, and it actually sets the finance for the following years. Usually, it's 5 to 6 years. The current one is 2014-2019. We are hoping that it will be not adopted, but that we will get the money that was planned for this procurement law in 2014. Knowing that the real money that we get, the real budget, is actually voted on on a yearly process. It's a finance law, and as we speak, yesterday I was reading the news on the internet, and the Ministry of Finance is, as we speak, looking to cut about 2.5 billion euros in the defense budget. So in the defense budget to 2017, knowing that we still have to build the budget for the next fiscal year, 2018, and that in the past 10 months, the CDS has asked for more money to be able to respond to the strategic environment, including terrorism and the re-emerging powers such as Russia or some other countries. The thing is, this process includes a yearly process and then a longer-term planning process. Okay, what is a capability? A capability is actually a system. It's not only equipment. It's equipment plus a lot of other things, including infrastructure, training, doctrine, including personnel. And you have two examples here. I think the second example is quite illustrating. If you take the capability of performing precision strikes in the depth of an enemy territory, you have several ways to do it, okay? You can do it with cruise missiles, for example. You can do it with special forces that would penetrate into the lines of the enemy. You can do it with fighter aircraft that would overfly and launch weapons in standoff positions. Notwithstanding, it is the same capability, okay? It is the same capability when it comes to effect-based approach to the capability, but of course that will not include the same other components of the capability. Infrastructure will be different, training, doctrine, personnel will also be different, depending on what capability you will choose to develop. So how do we do that in the Joint Staff? Okay, so as I said, what has been adopted is an effect-based approach to building capabilities. So the procurement agency and the Joint Staff work together, okay? They work together across 5 different force systems which are depicted on the slides, from deterrence to C4I star to effective engagement, and to protection and projection, mobility and logistics. These are the 5 domains that are embodied in the Joint Staff. In each of those domains, you have 2 to 4 colonels, okay, who are from the 3 different services. And when it comes to developing a capability, it falls into one of those 4 domains, okay. And this is elaborated not depending on the 3 services. So the 3 services, Army, Air Force, and Navy, are of course consulted, okay? So there is a link between the Joint Staff and the different service staff. But in the end, this approach allows to have a cross-service, non-depending on the influence of any of the services, to actually achieve the effect on the ground, the military effect. And the reason behind that is, as I was mentioning on my first slide, when it comes to operation, the operation commander is the CDS, and what he wants at the end of the day is a military effect on the ground. So he is the one holding in his hands the responsibilities to choose how the capability will be developed, whether it will be within the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force, or it will be cross-service, okay? So that in the end of the day, we achieve the military effect on the ground. So that gives a joint vision of capabilities. And we have to fight against cultures within the joint staff, of course, because in those 5 force system domains, you have colonels or captains from the Navy, Air Force, and the Army, because there is no joint officer when we enter the armed forces. But they work together. They work as a college. They get together every week. It's about 8 to 10 colonels total, or even 12, I think. And they get together every week. They work together closely with their counterparts in the service staffs to build up, in the end, an interoperable and a joint capability. So the issues and the different challenges for the future. First of all, there is the interface with the procurement agency, because that force system, sorry, I couldn't, can you flip back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. Because to the 5 domains that I was mentioning, the force system domains, the procurement agency is working differently. They still have service domains, so the connections sometimes are not working as good as they could. And in the future, what we would like on the joint staff side is that the procurement agency, the DGA, adopts the same force system structure as we do, so that we connect better and we actually build up better joint capabilities. Another challenge is picking up with the innovation and the digital transformation, because the pace of those transformations is actually very fast. And when it comes to developing an equipment, the cycle is usually quite long. So how do we manage to develop a complex equipment over 15 years, at the same time being able to cope with innovation and digital transformation? This is one, I think, of the biggest challenges we have, because it boils down to not only equipment, but also processes. And as Alex was saying, also the culture and the approach, the intellectual approach to building capabilities and coping with innovation. Okay, so the defense review is the topic I was mentioning early on. It will take three to 5 months in the future. We really hope that this will not be the main issue. We know that it's a political will to actually write a defense review, but to the CDS, the main concern is actually the last bullet here. It's really the budget, because at the end, no matter what white book you have, no matter how you build your defense review, in the end, it will depend on how much budget you will get. And in the past, I would say 20 years, the budget has been downsized in France. Lately, with the terrorist attack, it has been stabilized, even it has been increased a little bit. And this was not to please the armed forces. It was to be able to respond to the context and to the terrorist attack. But the CDS has been working very hard over the last 10 to 15 months to convince the political masters that we still have to make efforts to be able to build the armed forces that we need for the future, for today and for the future. Thank you.